What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Fiveum, here with Dave Sim's seminal work, The Tangents. Now you might be thinking, wait a second, isn't Dave Sim's seminal work Cerebus, the decades-long indie comic that has inspired lots of other comic books and was, I don't know, I guess a lot of people liked it. I've never actually read it. Well, I'm here to say, as Fiveum, I only deal in facts, and it's an objective fact that the tangents are the... Okay, yeah, honestly, these are freaking hilarious. Like, oh god, like when I first read these, tears were streaming down my face. I was practically choking on my own laughter. These are genius works of insanity. Like, when I first read them, I was expecting to be just appalled by some sort of misogynistic language, but I was just amazed at the sheer madness of this man. Now, I do want to warn you, there is going to be at least some misogynistic language, but holy fuck, it is just... this entire thing. I wish I could be this funny. Tangents by Dave Sim. Introduction. If the ensuing seems unduly harsh to male and female feminists, which it will, since everything besides complete and abject surrender to feminism strikes male and female feminists as unduly harsh, there is perhaps some small feminist consolation to be had from the fact that, with the completion of Tangent, I intend to have done with the subject of gender and gender quote-unquote issues entirely, in much the same way that the Cerebus Guide to Self-Publishing constituted my hail and farewell to the subject of self-publishing. As with the guide, Tangent represents a summing up of my conclusions about a subject which has occupied my attentions for a period of time, and which I have resolved for myself in my own way, and to my own satisfaction, and which I am now pleased to put behind me so that I can pursue other areas of interest to me. Pre-Tangent. Carol West resigned her position as Aardvark Vanheim's administrative assistant, a very fancy feminist name for a very plain secretarial position, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, and I don't intend that ironically, after quote-unquote inputting a first draught of Tangent Parts 1 and 2. Her resignation, far from being either a surprise or a disheartening event to me, seemed just the latest example of feminism undermining its own 30-year-long campaign to be taken seriously as a societal movement by literally getting offended and leaving in a huff whenever it encounters any viewpoint which does not represent absolute capitulation to its own. At some point, whether the intervening period is measured in days, weeks, months, years, decades, or centuries, at some point, feminism will, I am sure, at long last, be forced to face a number of hard questions about its total lack of intellectual foundation. Carol West can get offended and leave, but the hard questions remain. My feminist readers can roll their eyes theatrically, but the hard questions remain. They can exhale noisily, but the hard questions remain. They can snort derisively, but the hard questions remain. They can collectively turn their backs, but the hard questions remain. In the arena of intellectual opinion, when it comes to these hard questions, asking Dave Sim, quote, "Why do you hate women so much?" is irrelevant when my subject is feminism's lack of sound intellectual footing. It is irrelevant whether I hate women. It is... Wait. It is irrelevant whether I hate women. It is irrelevant whether I love women. It is irrelevant whether I consider women in any emotional context whatsoever. Just as when my question is directed toward feminism's lack of sound intellectual footing, it is irrelevant whether I hate ice cream, whether I love Okay, wait. Okay. I'm gonna keep all this laughter. It's not the same without it. Okay, like maybe in the future, I'll do a version where I somehow don't stumble over myself in laughter every 10 freaking seconds. But like, it's just not the same. Okay. 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 It is irrelevant whether I hate ice cream, whether I love ice cream, or whether I consider ice cream in any emotional context whatsoever. The emotional context of ice cream. All that is relevant when the issue at hand is my contention that feminism lacks a sound intellectual foundation. All that is relevant, germane, and or pertinent is the intellectual foundation, or lack of the same, upon which feminism rests. Walking away is not relevant. Rolling one's eyes theatrically is not relevant. Snorting derisively is not relevant. I'm not even going to put a donk in because, honestly, I think a donk would actually ruin the flow of this. I'm just going to try to go off the cuff, really. And, honestly, what is relevant is the fact that I'm going to be laughing my fucking ass off. It seems to me that after 30 years, all thinking people must be coming to realize that these reactions, far from constituting a defense of feminism, lead inescapably in the contrary direction, lead inescapably to the fact that feminism has no sound intellectual foundation. That, in fact, feminism has only its own rapidly dwindling momentum and the sheer gall, chutzpah, nerve, and inherent unreasoning contrarianness of its perpetrators as its foundation, as its sole line of defense, as its single raison d'etre, and its solitary rationale. Anyway, this is how I began. Tangent 1 of 5. Having dispensed with the Hemingways, how many of you still think that Mary Hemingway, despite having murdered her husband, is a quote-unquote strong, independent woman and a good role model for wives everywhere? Shows of hands. Almost all of you, big surprise. Wait. Okay, I just gotta read this one. Okay, wait. How many of you still think that Mary Hemingway, despite having murdered her husband, is a strong, independent woman and a good role model for wives everywhere? So first off, like, you can't see this, but the quote starts with there's quotes around strong, independent woman and a good role model for wives everywhere, end quote, then question mark. Is that a Canadian thing or something? Then show of hands, almost all of you, big surprise. So like, he literally opens his argument on rationality by doing a mock audience style thing with no fucking audience. Okay. I now prepare for the next complete waste of my own time and energy. Okay, actually, that's pretty honest. My promised quote-unquote last word on gender entitled Tangent. All males, as opposed to men, sound like social workers and or voodoo profession wannabes. So it... Wait, like, wannabe apostrophe S. So it came as no surprise when the fellow turned to me and asked, "Where do you think your ideas about women come from?" And the saccharine undertone was there. When we share our experiences with others, it helps us to get in touch with our innermost feelings and emotions. Where do you think your ideas about women come from? 2 things. Foremost, they originate from the research that I did for Mothers and Daughters, not the voluminous reading of everything from nurse vows to voodoo pop, my mother, my self-help, our bodies, ourselves, our house pets, ourselves, et al., to women's studies. Quote, after all the correlatives of the societal norm have been maximized through the intuitive, the nurturing, and spiritually nutritive. What the heck is he quoting? through the hard-won maturation of our collective emotive a priori, dispensation construct regard herein, not as the mere imitative imposition of the aforementioned will for power, the now universally discredited patriarchal model, but a new model founded upon, to reiterate, the intuitive, the nurturing, the spirit and spiritually nutritive, pursuant to, but not inextricably bound within, the ad hoc antecedent culture and or cultural imperative, blah, blah, blah. I really want to know what he was quoting. All I got out of that research, I already knew. A. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm going to have to say this. A. Women want to be raped by rich, muscular, handsome doctors. B. Women are completely self-absorbed and thus see themselves in everything around them. C. Feminism is no different from communism. There's the red baiting. You can't have one of these without some good old-fashioned red baiting, man. Okay. Just gonna breathe deeply now. Okay. Feminism is no different from communism in that all of its literature is founded upon convoluted syntax, bafflegab, and academic jargon which paints a false, albeit attractive, picture of an unattainable utopia which can be achieved easily by everyone in the world, simply and simultaneously. In both feminist and communist literature, the quote-unquote crux point is invariable, changing their basic nature overnight, acknowledging grudgingly the small likelihood of so sweeping a societal change coming about on its own. Quote, a rigorous and thorough program of parenthesis, communist and feminist literature, share an admiration for the euphemism, in parenthesis, re-education may be called for, end quote. I honestly wish I knew what he was quoting. Like, seriously, what is he quoting? Like earlier on he references a handful of books, but like, is he quoting any of them? Alright. I really wish I knew. Anyway, that is, all non-comrades, non-fellow travelers must be subject to unrelenting political indoctrination, sloganeering, and brainwashing, such as, a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to choose. This entire paragraph is written in one set of parentheses. I sense that my situation with feminism is comparable to that of pre-1989 writers faced with the task of quote-unquote debunking communism. How extensive, lengthy, and intricate an explanation can one pursue in explaining that 2 + 2 do not equal 5, but in fact equal 4, without, even in one's own view, treading well within the lunatic borders of the excruciatingly self-evident. I suspect that feminism, like communism, must be allowed to, quote, strut and fret its hour upon the stage, end quote, playing out its manifold absurdities, until even the most ardent and most willfully ignorant true believer comes to realize, as has happened with communism, that there is no there. Next paragraph. No, the research which most contributed to my quote-unquote ideas about women was the series of informal interviews I conducted with mothers and daughters, with mothers about their daughters, with daughters about their mothers, with daughters about their daughters, with mothers about their mothers. Oh, boy. It was really the first time in my adult life that I spoke to women who I found physically unattractive. So, like, does he want to fuck his mom? I'm just saying. It's implied. It's not explicitly stated, but it's kind of implied. Or at least that he found his mother attractive. Well, I'm not... Honestly, there's a lot better stuff to judge him for. Okay. It was really the first time in my adult life that I spoke to women who I found physically unattractive, and the first time I spoke to women with any motive besides getting them into bed. Yep, he totally wants to fuck his mom. In the case of the attractive women that I interviewed, it was a guarantee that I was not going to get them into bed. Mothers and daughters as subject existing at the opposite end of the conventional spectrum from those topics which lead to sex, and knowing that, for the first time in my adult life, the intellectual reasoning, writerly part of my mind was engaged when talking to women. It's really no mystery why his wife left him. For the first while, I couldn't figure out what went wrong. I'm usually a quick study when it comes to a given subject, the high-altitude mapping, as Alan Moore called it in our Dialogue from Hell a few years back. It's really what writing is made up of. Ask the hard questions, narrow the list of possibilities, and work with the resulting template. As it turns out, nothing in the feminist psyche conforms to this model. All women are feminists, and all feminist evidence is anecdotal. Okay, wait. Just wait. He complains that feminist evidence is anecdotal, and yet the bulk of his research, or rather the research that had the most impact on him, was literally anecdotal interviews he had with women. It's literally like just one page apart. It's beautiful. Like the way he contradicts himself. It's so beautiful. I swear, he could just recite this without missing a beat. It's beautiful, man. Beautiful. All women are feminists, and all feminist evidence is anecdotal. Ask them a question and they will tell you a little story. Ask them a question to clarify what you infer is the point of the story, and they will tell you another story. When they do attempt to draw a conclusion or a larger inference from an anecdote, they will often ask, does that make any sense? And the answer, of course, is almost invariably, no, it doesn't make any sense. And since I wasn't trying to get any of them into bed, I would say so. If you're trying to get them into bed, you always say, yes, that makes perfect sense, or manufacture some sensible interpretation that has nothing to do with what they said. Telling them that they don't make sense, I found, is like telling them that not only do they not win the trip to Hawaii, they don't even get that Samsonite luggage. They become forlorn and uncommunicative. That was when I realized that it was impossible to engage them on an intellectual reasoning, writerly level, that is, purely matter-of-fact fashion. I had to act to portray myself as being happy, sympathetic, interested, and cheerful in order to maintain a level of ellipses. The next paragraph also starts with ellipses. I don't know what you would call it. It wasn't communication in any meaningful sense of the term as I understand it. It was a kind of emotional badminton. I acted happy, sympathetic, interested, and cheerful. And then it was her turn to act happy, sympathetic, interested, and cheerful. And then it was my turn, etc. She might accidentally say something interesting, where I could, with sincerity, say that I found what she had just said interesting. This temporarily escalated the level of her cheerfulness. But alas, that is all that it did. Whatever was being said, ranking a very distant second to maintaining and escalating the level of cheerfulness. A very, very distant second. I realize that this is where the hen house cacophony originates. If quote-unquote communication within a group of women is working properly, as women see working properly, everyone should be talking faster and faster and faster and in higher and higher musical range, either portraying themselves or being, the two states being deemed interchangeable in the female world, cheerful, more cheerful, cheerfulest, until maximum cheerfulness having been achieved, a glass breaks or something. It literally says a glass breaks or something. Oh God. That was when I realized that women are emotion-based beings. Okay, keep telling yourself that. Once a thing is seen, it can't be unseen. I gave a couple of more tries at relationships after that 1.5 years and 3.5 years respectively, but it was really like solving a brain teaser after someone has given you the answer. You know, one of those puzzles where you're supposed to make 3 triangles by connecting the dots using only 7 lines or whatever. It literally says, or whatever. It can drive you insane for a month, but if you look in the back of the book, or if someone shows you how it's solved, or you figure it out on your own, there is little entertainment value to be had in endlessly drawing those same 7 lines to make those same 3 triangles. Likewise, there is very little in the way of intellectual value to be derived from revisiting, either mentally or in person, the simple fact, once discovered, that women are emotion-based beings, and that consequently any female-centered or female-originated political movement, more precisely, quote-unquote political, quote-unquote movement, will lack sound intellectual footing. Hence, my billing of tangent as my last word on gender. Women are emotion-based beings. You know, fine. If women are emotion-based beings, then what the fuck does that say about Dave Sim? One of the spillovers from mothers and daughters into Rick's story was Victor Davis telling Rick, just be happy every waking minute of your life, and you've got her for as long as you want her. Which was really a perverse way for Victor Davis to put it. It's valid advice, but the every minute of your life was unnecessarily arduous, which Victor knew, but in his willfully cruel way thought he would add a little going-away present for Rick. It could be more appropriately phrased as, if things aren't going right, just act cheerful and say things in a musical tone of voice, and everything will be fine. Which they will, but in my own experience. So, in his own experience, anecdotally. And yet, women are emotional, they're feminists, and they're anecdotal. Logic. Which they will, but in my own experience, I found that that was no way to live. But even as I found that that was no way to live, I recognize that there was no other way to live in the context. With an emotion-based being, your only choices are to narcotize her with a steady stream of cheerful musical expression, or manufacture a chaotic mixture of emotional portrayals to quote-unquote wake her up. Awake being a purely relative term, of course, in referring to emotion-based beings. You can try to be sensible and reasonable, but all you're going to get back is an emotion-based portrayal of sense and reason having nothing to do with sense and reason. An emotion-based being just attempts to reflect and or portray what little emotion she can discern and reason, sombre, serious, earnest, non-musical. Wait. It literally just says sombre, serious, earnest, non-musical. Okay? And attaches the portrayal to an arbitrary stream of musical vocalizations having nothing to do with the subject at hand. This invariably provokes extreme impatience in the non-emotion-based being, to whose impatient expressions the emotion-based being will invariably respond, "Oh, why are you getting so angry?" Impatience is not a happy emotion, but an identifiable one for an emotion-based being. I was singing your somber, serious, earnest, non-musical song with you, and now you're angry. Why don't you just sing a cheerful song instead so we can both be happy? To the emotion-based being, this makes perfect sense. Honestly, as I read this, I'm just thinking, if women are emotion-based beings, what the fuck is Dave Sim? Is he just a being of, pure crack or something? Yeah, you know what, for now, that's what I'm just going to call him. A being of pure crack. Oh, another paragraph in all parentheses. He loves using his parentheses. All lengthy and thorough explanations being digressional at this point, the fellow asked, "Is this like that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus?" To his credit, he hadn't actually read the book, and neither have I. "There's always a danger with those things," I said. "I was in a bookstore and I saw the cover of the sequel. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, children are from heaven." The fellow nodded readily. However, as there were a number of women eavesdropping in the vicinity, I thought it worth adding for their benefit, if a man lowers... Okay. If a man lowers himself to a woman's level of fairy tale metaphor, I mean self-evidently men are not from Mars and women are not from Venus, women will invariably drag the discussion over into something comparable to children are from heaven, smiling and chuckling and feeling really good about themselves. Children are from heaven. Now we're really getting somewhere. The fellow nodded impatiently. Like, I just feel that guy, like, I'm pretty sure he was just some sort of Dave Sim fan, and he was like, yo, Davey, like, what are you talking about, women? And then Dave just goes on this rampage, and the guy's just like, thanks, and he's just, you know, he just doesn't know how to get himself out of it. It's almost like watching a car crash, you know? Man, like, you know, Dave Sim is still alive. I really need to thank him for these. They are a masterpiece of comedy. I'm going to say it a million more times. Because I just love it. Next paragraph. Anyway, I found that I couldn't live that way. A woman is going to do whatever makes her cheerful at the moment. And that, in my experience, more anecdotes, is the extent of her perception of ethics. Oh, God. Oh, God. Okay. I'm going to try to focus now. Because it gets even funnier later. And this is just the beginning. Okay. In order to maintain a relationship with an emotion-based being, it is necessary to be cheerful about anything that makes her cheerful, coupled with a woman's right to choose as central ethic, or rather, quote-unquote ethic. This involves a wide and variegated... Wait, let me check something. Is that a word? Oh shit, it is a word. Variegated. Honestly, like, this dude's got a crazy high vocabulary, and there's gonna be at least a few times when I'm gonna have to, like, Google a few words just because this guy's got a really good grasp of English. I gotta admire that. Okay, this involves a wide and variegated spectrum of feminist actions and behaviors and opinions. At one time, I rated sex as being very, very high on my list of life's pleasures. Ultimately, for myself, the spiritual toll, which was exacted by maintaining a rictus grin. Rictus? Okay, I just checked. Rictus is the opening or gape of a mouth. Holy fuck! Like, this guy really was ahead of his time. Like he's basically just describing how he had to soy face to get through life. I mean, damn. And he uses the word rictus. I guess if you ever want to annoy someone when they post a soy wojak, just, I don't know, use that word. Rictus. Okay. By maintaining a rictus grin in the face of all feminist actions, behaviors, and opinions across the full range of that spectrum made the price of sex too high, which, considering how highly I once rated sex as a pleasure, is really saying something, I think. Again, more anecdotes. Okay. Then, oh god, now this part's in brackets. Okay. I discovered through celibacy and the avoidance of masturbation that sexual desire is a lot like a rash. If you keep scratching it, you make it worse, and thus scratching it comes to seem like an urgent toppermost of the poppermost. Toppermost of the poppermost. Toppermost of the poppermost. This dude's talking about, like, about sex, and he says toppermost of the poppermost. He doesn't even put that in quotes. He puts scratching it in quotes, but toppermost of the poppermost. I swear to God, if he calls a penis a ding-dong, I'm gonna flip. Okay. The toppermost of the poppermost, a central necessity in your life if you learn to leave your penis. Penis is in italics. You italicized the word penis. Oh god, like I am literally crying right now. Okay, if you learn to leave your penis alone, I discovered your penis will learn to leave you alone. Next paragraph. This dovetailed with the second source in answering, where do you think your ideals about women come from? To my own decision to alternative periods of intentional celibacy, as opposed to not getting laid. Wow, honestly, like, he's even predicting the whole MGTOW and incel and volcel thing. Fuck. I'm afraid of him getting anything else right, honestly. Okay, with periods of monogamous sexual activity and Wait. Okay. My own decision to alternate periods of intentional celibacy, as opposed to not getting laid, with periods of monogamous sexual activity and semi-monogamous sexual activity. Is it any wonder why his wife left him? I mean, like, I can't even say that his wife left him and he went mad. No, he went mad, and then his wife left him. Having gone back and forth between the two states over the course of a decade, I can state unequivocally that celibate Dave Sim sees reality more clearly than sexually active Dave Sim, who willfully hypnotized himself into seeing the world in a manifestly untrue way and persuaded himself that feminist lies were true, that many feminist lies contained elements of truth, that feminist lies were not wholly untruthful. Surrendering an accurate perception of reality for a world of fairy tale falsehoods was part of the high price of sex, a price I was no longer prepared to pay. You know, Dave, if you're that horny, just go see a hooker or something, okay? Like, I get it, you're an artist. Alright, you know, artsy folks, they either, like, fuck everything or just never fuck, and then, like on rare occasions you find one who ends up in a happy monogamous relationship or something, but like, dude, you're an artist. If you want to be horny and you don't like the emotional commitment, then just find a hooker or something, okay? I got tired of believing 5 impossible things before breakfast. Odd to say that one aloud for the first time. For instance, the fellow asked. Well, take government-funded daycare. I said, a central plank in the platform of the fairy tale world of emotion-based beings inhabit. Their belief and feeling that it is the responsibility of government to raise children, feminists and their hollowed-out ventriloquist puppet husbands. Please, bear with my use of that admittedly prejudicial phrase until I've had the chance to elaborate, have universally adopted government-funded daycare in principle. Not only is it fiscally irresponsible and inherently unfair use of public funds, benefiting only those mothers who choose to work, it is diametrically opposed to a central tenet of any civilized society that children are the responsibility of their parents to rear. When was the last time you even heard it described as rearing children? You rear children, you raise hogs! What the feminists and their ventriloquist puppet husbands are talking about doing with government-funded daycare is raising children as if they were a herd of interchangeable swine. No surprise coming from a gender which has no ethics, no scruples, no sense of right and wrong. Just hand the kids over to the voodoo profession, social workers, government bean counters, and go along with whatever happens to be the ethical consensus du jour. Raise boys to be girls, raise girls to be boys. You know what? Hang on. I want to reread that paragraph without the little, he has a little interruption in the middle. I'm going to keep them both in because, like, this deserves to be listened to the way I'm reading it, okay? Since I am a man, I am objectively... Okay, no, I can't even joke. I can't even pull that off. Well, take government-funded daycare, I said. A central plank in the platform of the fairy tale world emotion-based beings inhabit. Their belief and feeling that it is the responsibility of government to raise children, feminists and their hollowed-out ventriloquist puppet husbands have universally adopted government-funded daycare in principle. Not only is it fiscally irresponsible and an inherently unfair use of public funds, benefiting only those mothers who choose to work, it is diametrically opposed to a central tenet of any civilized society that children are the responsibility of their parents to rear. When was the last time you even heard it described as rearing children? You rear children, you raise hogs. What the feminists and their ventriloquist puppet husbands are talking about doing with government-funded daycare is raising children as if they were a herd of interchangeable swine. No surprise coming from a gender which has no ethics, no scruples, no sense of right and wrong. Just hand the kids over to the voodoo profession, social workers, government bean counters, and go along with whatever happens to be the ethical consensus du jour. Raise boys to be girls and raise girls to be boys. You know, reading that again, I'm not even able to laugh. I'm I'm just trying to make sense out of it. Like, he just inserts, you rear children, you raise hogs. I'll admit I'm a young guy. Maybe it used to be that way. Okay. And honestly, he predicted the whole trans panic thing, raise boys to be girls, raise girls to be boys. I hate it when I hate it when he gets these moral scares right so early. How? Well, I'm sure I don't know. I'm just Porky or Petunia's mother. They have experts who know how to raise boys to be girls and raise girls to be boys. I'll let them decide. Listen, I'd love to chat about this, but I have a meeting with a client at 9 and I'm going to be late as it is. This connected quite neatly with an article I had in that morning's Globe and Mail, which said that some astronomical percentage of parents thought it was the responsibility of public schools to teach sexual morality. I mean, that one just stinks of feminism. Homosexuality is just another lifestyle choice, completely normal. Homosexuality isn't a choice, it's a genetic reality. Oh, okay. So leaving aside the obvious fact that those two realities contradict each other... okay, wait a second. Like, I don't know, maybe it was something that was said back in the day, but like, let's be real here. It's almost exclusively the religious right who refers to being gay as a lifestyle choice. You know what? I'll be emotional. I'll be anecdotal. I am honestly not familiar with any, like, reputable feminist or even just any feminist in general who refers to being gay as a lifestyle choice. But okay. Homosexuality is just another lifestyle choice, completely normal. Homosexuality isn't a choice. It's a genetic reality. Oh, okay. So leaving aside the obvious fact that those two realities contradict each other, my own view is that all sexuality is a matter of choice since it is not a life-sustaining necessity. What or whom you have sex with, or whether you have sex at all, is optional. I would not even be here if it weren't for sex, true. But if I choose never to have sex, I'm still here. When do you want to start teaching this lifestyle choice or genetic reality in the classroom? What age? 6, 7, 10, 12? And how do you want to teach it? Bring a couple of dykes and a couple of interior decorators to talk to a bunch of third graders? What the hell was this? Bring in a couple of dykes and a couple of interior decorators to talk to a bunch of third graders. Well, I'm sure I don't know. I'm just Porky or Petunia's mother. They have experts on cultural diversity and alternative lifestyles now, don't they? I'll let them decide. Listen, I'd love to chat about this, but I have a meeting with a client at 10:30, and I'm going to be late as it is. This is actually jumping the gun a little on Tangent 2's examination of the feminist homosexualist axis. Feminist homosexualist. I should add, he adds IST to a lot of words that don't seem to make much sense. You'll see what I mean when it goes on. But suffice to say that their feminist homosexualist consensus view of teaching homosexuality in the schools seems to be A, it's a very good idea, and B, men are wrong. It's difficult, actually impossible, to discern any agreement beyond that point. B, men are wrong. You know, this is where, like, he hasn't even mentioned the hypothetical role of men in this weird feminist homosexualist axis, but he just needs to feel victimized. Honestly, dude, yeah, you are a victim, and let's be honest, you fucking deserve it for this shit. I mean, like, you don't even deserve to be shoved in a locker. You deserve to be, like, just forced to read this shit in front of the entire high school and be laughed at because it would provide so much joy, man. But this is way too many words for our CNN get-to-the-point news information age, isn't it? So let's distill daycare and government-funded daycare into a short and concise, impossible things to believe before breakfast form. Number 1. A mother who works a full-time job and delegates to strangers the raising of her children 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, does just as good a job as a mother who hand-rears her children full-time. Number 2. It makes great sense for the government to pay $10,000 to $15,000 a year to fund a daycare space for a child so its mother, who pays perhaps $2,000 in taxes, can be a contributing member of society. All you husbands and daycare daddies are just nodding like crazy. Makes sense to me, Dave. Gotta have it. Government-funded daycare. No way around that. Gotta have it. A woman's right to choose. A woman's right to choose. For the benefit of the rest of my readership, I decided to compare a partial list of impossible things to believe before breakfast, jotted down over the course of an hour while working on a Cerebus page. I figured a dozen or so would get my point across. I'll just continue the numbering from our daycare entries. Number 3. A woman's doctor has more of a valid claim to participate in the decision to abort a fetus than does the father of that fetus. Wait. That, doesn't that, contradict the whole woman's right to choose, the idea that the doctor is taking part in it? Well, whatever. Number 4. So long as a woman makes a decision after consulting with her doctor, she is incapable of making an unethical choice. Okay, moral. Okay, here's the deal. Okay? If you're like Indira Gandhi or some female dictator, just have a medical doctor as one of your advisors. Have him advise you, or her advise you, have them advise you. Alright? Then just make whatever fucking choice you want, and now you can't make an unethical choice. Genius. I was going to allow the impossible things to stand alone and hatch out however they might in each individual reader's mind once they had been planted, to mix a metaphor. However, in the aftermath of Carol West's resignation, that seems unnecessarily naive given the willfulness with which hard questions are ignored in our society. So here interposed is my more elaborate opinion on abortion. Wait. Well, let me check something real fast. Let me just... Okay, yeah. So, he lists points 1 and 2, and then, like, a little mockery on, husbands and daycare daddies. Then 3 and 4. Then he goes, okay, 1, 2... About 2 1/4 pages on his opinion of abortion before getting back to the list. Looking at this list, there are a total of 14 points. Granted, after he gets back to the points, he just kind of lists them all off, but... formatting, I guess. Okay. The far larger question to me is one of, what God therefore hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Matthew 19:6, Mark 10:9. This, so far as I know, being the only genuinely biblical quotation, the synoptic Jesus again, Kvit emptor, in the otherwise wholly incomplete secular Christian wedding ceremony, is a major reason that I have no objection to gay marriages. Okay, so so he makes it clear that he's not really that religious, he's not objecting to gay marriage, but he's also afraid that, that gay people are gonna teach kids how to be gay and that being gay is a lifestyle choice? Whatever. I love this shit, man. Okay. I'm reasonably certain that marriage is a completely pagan, completely female invention, no more sacred as an institution than our feminism or communism. Yes, just go to the communism institution. I don't know, get one communism going for you. It is, after all, called matrimony and not patrimony, isn't it? I mean, duh. I'm going to assume he's being facetious there, but I just get this feeling that he really meant that. Like something about that really just stuck with him and still sticks with him. Okay. It seems to me utterly foolish to ascribe virtually any of our society's haphazard, literally catch as catch can, marriage unions to our creator. In my view, an omnipotent and omniscient being simply wouldn't have that lousy a track record. Pregnancy, it seems to me, is altogether a different matter. Inexplicable as it is that some sects of coitus produce offspring while others do not, despite the best efforts of medical science, to establish irrefutable laws of cause and effect, it seems to me that here God's hand is very much in evidence and, What God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Sperm and egg, fertilized egg, and uterine wall, very much applicable if abortion is, as the feminists insist, a matter of a woman having control over her own body. Then I think a public demonstration of a woman willing herself to become unpregnant or willing her fertilized egg to detach itself from her uterine wall would settle the issue once and for all, at which point I would happily go along with the secular humanist consensus view. Ooh, secular human. Okay, now, secular humanist, that caught my eye because, for a very long time, at least starting in, the 60s up till maybe the 80s or 90s, secular humanism was an important part of the religious rights vocabulary. This idea that secular humanism was actually a religion in itself that was part of some sort of agenda to make America godless. I guess I was wrong earlier when I assumed that Dave Sim wasn't all that religious. I guess he just has a very unusual interpretation of the Bible. But the fact that he is, mimicking religious right talking points, his use of describing being gay as a lifestyle choice, as well as his use of the term secular humanist consensus view, especially secular humanist, makes me wonder where he's getting this information from. I'm just guessing right now, but I think he's a bit more Jerry Falwell Sr.-y than he would like to admit. Okay, so he thinks that... wait, let me just reread this, okay? If abortion is, as the feminists insist, a matter of a woman having control over her own body, then I think a public demonstration of a woman willing herself to become unpregnant or willing her fertilized egg to detach itself from her uterine wall would settle the issue once and for all, at which point I would happily go with the secular humanist consensus view. Oh wait, but of course, a woman has no more control over her reproductive functions apart from abstinence than she has over the number of hairs growing on her head or the color of her eyes. So wait a second, the fact that, so wait, he's, wait, oh God. So he thinks that abortion would only truly be a choice if a woman could just use her mind to make herself unpregnant. But a woman doesn't even use her mind to make herself pregnant. Does he legitimately seem to think that a woman just wills herself into pregnancy, that she just closes her eyes and prays and she gets another virgin birth and here comes the, I don't know, would it be the Antichrist or the return of Jesus or something? I don't know. Thus, to me, a woman's right to choose constitutes little more than an imbecilic paraphrase of free will. That is, we are all, by the grace of God, free to choose. That is what free will is. We can choose to commit murder. We can choose to steal. We can choose to commit adultery. Honestly, I'm pretty sure Dave Sim has, he literally talked about, engaging in non-monogamous sex over the course of 10 years on and off, so just saying. The underpinning of the life of the God-fearing individual is that there is a price to be paid, sometimes in this world, sometimes in the world to come, sometimes in both, for choosing incorrectly. The ritual sacrifice of babies is well documented among the pagan peoples named in the Torah, and is irrefutably an abomination in the eyes of God. So yeah, I actually know a bit what he's talking about. He's referring to sacrifices to Moloch. I've actually tried looking into who or what Moloch was. Apparently, there doesn't seem to be a singular consensus as to who or what Moloch was, or even if Moloch was a deity or an entity, or even just a broad term to describe anything that accepted human sacrifice. However, this implication of him comparing, abortion to ritual sacrifice of babies. So he seems to believe that life begins at conception? Is that what he believes? Alright. Is abortion in the same category? As a global civilization, here in the first nanoseconds of the 21st century, the present consensus would appear to be yes, no, and or maybe. Half of us believe that abortion is in no way comparable. Half of us believe that it is. To me, all that is relevant is God's opinion, and since medical abortion evolved well after the death of God's last messenger and seal of prophets Muhammad, peace be upon him, in 632 CE, that is unknown to us, it is unknown to me, and it is unknown to you, and it is unknown to Pope John Paul II, his predecessors, and his successors. Likewise, God's opinion on condoms, ribbed, colored, or plain, and birth control pills. On the last day, when all is made plain to us, I would not be terribly surprised, from my present vantage point of self-admitted absolute ignorance, to find that abortions and birth control will be indictable offenses for some and non-indictable offenses for others based on God's superior and perfect knowledge of each individual. Just as I would not be terribly surprised to find that abortion and birth control will be deemed murder, high crimes against one's own soul, and far worse, the soul of another, or to find that abortion and birth control are considered lesser transgressions against one's own soul, more comparable to say smoking than to say murder. Genuine faith in God, it seems to me, brings one face to face with the profound level of one's own ignorance about what is right and what is wrong post 632 CE. The fact that the various church hierarchies refuse to acknowledge their own ignorance in no way alters my own belief that we are all ignorant in these areas. But the bottom line to me is A, we won't know until the last day, and B, a woman's right to choose contributes nothing to the debate. I'm honestly trying to make sense out of this. I really am. Okay. In my own sexually active days, I found the idea of a woman's right to choose to be a more than a little ethically convenient. Had any of the women I had sex with gotten pregnant, none did so far as I know. Okay, honestly, good. I would not trust him near any kids. Like he would probably just torment them. I could just take the secular humanist high road of saying that I believed in a woman's right to choose, thus, theoretically anyway, allowing her to assume whatever karmic debt or spiritual burden results from having an abortion, while on my own part escaping with just the financial burden of a few $100s for the cost of the operation. Even in my secular humanist days, it seemed just a little too, as I say, ethically convenient, considering what was actually involved, the irresponsible initiation of a human life followed by the equally irresponsible, to me, eradicating of that human life. Two wrongs don't make a right. At the point of greatest reduction, it seemed to me a double ethical pitfall. And no, I don't blame women for that. Okay, that's probably the first time he'll say that. That's probably the only time he says that. Women have as natural an affinity for medical science as they had for its progenitor magic. You know, I seriously hope he has a female doctor or something. Like, I'm going to apologize to that hypothetical female doctor, but just the sheer emotions it would bring in that man's head. Man, I would pay to watch that show. If there is something that women can make use of that, in their view, will provide them with immediate tactical gratification or relief from anxiety, they will make use of it and then welcome any voodoo professional feminist ideology, band-aid assistance in rationalizing their way, I think, natural feelings of guilt. Wait. Okay, wait. Let me go back, okay? Women have as natural an affinity for medical science as they had for its progenitor magic. If there is something that women can make use of that, in their view, will provide them with immediate tactical gratification or relief from anxiety, they will make use of it and then welcome any voodoo professional feminist ideology band-aid assistance in rationalizing away their, I think, natural feelings of guilt. This is all one sentence. So long as the assistance or rationalizing comes after the fact. It is, in my view, part of a man's ethical obligation to his own soul and to his creator to endeavor to be, or become, sufficiently wary of this female trait, and for men to not allow their penises to lead them down specific unethical paths where a man's own fate in this world and possibly the next becomes bound up with these disposed or predisposed to believe in these sorts of ethical conveniences. In saying that, I no more believe that women are to blame in any way for those occasions when I allowed my own penis to lead me down specific unethical paths than, as an example, cigarettes are to blame for the fact that a year and a half after quitting smoking, I still wanted to smoke a cigarette. It was my choice to smoke my first cigarette at the age of 11, and it was my choice to smoke every cigarette I smoked thereafter. We now return you to your regularly scheduled list of impossible things to believe before breakfast already in progress. Number 5. A car with 2 steering wheels, 2 gas pedals, and 2 brakes drives more efficiently than a car with 1 steering wheel, 1 gas pedal, and 1 brake, which is why marriage should always be an equal partnership. You know, I think he's just describing one of those, driver's ed cars. I remember when I was, taking driving classes, they did have a special kind of car that did allow the instructor to have a steering wheel and a brake, but no gas pedal. Although, at the same time... screw it, let's get back to this thing. Number 6. It is absolutely necessary for women to be allowed to join or participate fully in any gathering place for men, just as it is absolutely necessary that there be women-only environments from which men are excluded. Number 7. Because it involves taking jobs away from men and giving them to women, affirmative action makes for a fairer and more just society. I'm going to do something that I'm sure at least, let's see, of my currently 10 fans that... yeah, I'm sure at least 8 of you might not like. I'm going to embrace my inner neolib right now. Prosperity is not a zero-sum game, you ding-dong. There's not some sort of limited amount of jobs that will only stay limited. Number 8. It is important to have lower physical standards for women fire persons and women police persons. You could just say firefighters and police officers, it's not explicitly said, but I can just feel the just sheer condescension, the way he wrote fire persons. I should say the condescension and the smug. The firemen, no fire persons. I mean, firefighter is just so much cooler. So is police officer. Okay. It is important to have lower physical standards for women fire persons and women police persons, so that one day half of all fire persons and police persons will be women, thus more effectively protecting the safety of the public. Now that I think about it, I don't know if it's as much of a lower standard as much as it's just a slightly different standard. I don't know where he's getting all this stuff from, but... Number 9. Affirmative action at colleges and universities needs to be maintained now that more women than men are being enrolled in order to keep from giving men an unfair advantage academically. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna give you my hot take right now. I don't give a fuck about affirmative action, and I'll fucking tell you why, alright? When I applied either to a college or to a job, what happens next? Fuck if I fucking know. For all I know, they could just be... putting all the resumes on dartboards and just tossing the darts up and picking whoever it lands on. If they get rid of affirmative action tomorrow, that ain't gonna change. I ain't gonna fucking know how this shit works behind the scenes. The only people who fucking know are those who are doing the hiring. Blaming affirmative action for that issue is really just dumb scapegoating. They could get rid... I'll say it again. They could get rid of affirmative action tomorrow. It's not going to change the fact that nobody knows how this shit works behind the scenes, except for those who are actually working that shit behind the scenes. Number 10. Having ensured that there is no environment for men where women do not belong, see number 6, it is important to have zero tolerance of any expression or action which any woman might regard as sexist, to ensure greater freedom for everyone. Number 11. Only a society which maintains a level of 95% of alimony and child support being paid by men to women can men and women be considered as equals. This is kind of an interesting look because like, that's almost literally an aspect of a patriarchal society, the idea that, oh, the woman is the default caregiver, and the man is the default breadwinner, and that those roles are to be defaulted. And it's the fact that he sees this literally patriarchal role and is just like, this is feminism, really demonstrates the fact that he is just pulling this shit out his ass. Research. Yeah, fucking research. Number 12. An airline stewardess who earned $20,000 a year at the time she married a baseball player earning $6 million a year is entitled, in the event of a divorce, to $3 million for each year of the marriage and probably more. I mean, I'm gonna presume if it wasn't a good relationship, she had to deal with his bullshit or something. But, I'm gonna presume that if he's that rich, the baseball player would probably sign a prenup or something. Like, is this a reference to a real event that happened at some point? I really don't understand, why these specific numbers. I don't know. 13. A man's opinions on how to rear and or raise a child are invalid because he is not the child's mother. However, his financial obligation is greater because no woman gets pregnant by herself. So, this is the... This is the same shit as, 11. It's basically, why does society say that men have to be one crusty gender role and women have to be the other? It must be feminism. Yeah, it's fucking feminism. You know, socialism is when capitalism, feminism is when patriarchy. Bottom fucking text. Number 14. Disagreeing with any of these statements makes you anti-woman and or a misogynist. Honestly? Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah. I'm sure if you can find anyone who believes in literally all of those at once, go fucking nuts. So how did you do, fellas? Don't worry if there are a few statements there that you disagreed with. Just use a few of those handy feminist obfuscations like, well, of course these issues are very, very complicated. Or, well, I see what Dave was saying. I have to say that I agree more than I disagree. Or, of course, these issues are all works in progress. I'd like to hear a few more opinions before I make up my mind. Or, there might be some inequality, but compared to the centuries of women being oppressed, it seems a small price to pay temporarily until it all gets worked out. If you notice that none of these obfuscations has anything to do with any of the statements, just keep repeating, a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to choose, until you stop thinking and or feel better. So wait a second. Let's just go back to some of these statements he made, okay? So while I see what Dave is saying, I have to say that I agree more than I disagree. So, that part in particular, it's basically someone hypothetically saying, I agree with some of what you're saying, but not all of it. And that's not good enough for Dave. You gotta just agree with him down fucking pat. And, of course, one that's, I'd like to hear a few more opinions before I make up my mind. You know, for a guy who, who attacked women earlier for being creatures of anecdote, and he praises his own shoddy research. He doesn't seem to like it when people are trying to research shit. No, I guess he just knows this shit. He's the fucking sage of women. This guy. Although I have given the husbands a hard time here, I am not without sympathy, having been one myself. Husbands, it seems to me, are caught between the rock of feminism and the hard place of their own marriages. That is, capitulate or leave. Deadbeat dads, to me, is a skewed feminist perception. It is not that men are deserting their families in many cases, so much as it is that they are being driven from their families by the pressure to believe 5 impossible things before breakfast. Or I should say 14 possible things before breakfast. To capitulate, that is, to the feminist ideology, to admit to the Orwellian imperative, to believe that feminist lies are the truth, and that masculine truths are lies. Reason can't win an argument with emotion. Reason can capitulate to emotion, or reason can leave. It is, in either case, emotion, being without any sound intellectual foundation, will always find itself fully justified in its every action. And just remember, if you make a comment about Dave's 14 things, and, well, I should say rather, just a comment on Dave's opinions, and you don't just automatically agree with all of it, then apparently, as he mentioned earlier, that counts as a feminist obfuscation? Or, let me go back for a second. Okay, so, yeah, I'm just thinking about that list, you know? So, like, he lists 14 straw man arguments, and then he mockingly says, if you disagree with any of these, you're a misogynist. That's number 14. And then he says, how did you do, fellas? Don't worry if there are a few statements there that you disagreed with. Just use a feminist obfuscation. Okay. I'm looking back at it now. I'm even more fucking confused. I love this shit. Okay. For feminists, for wives, for women, for emotion-based beings, it is a win-win-win-win situation. Either her husband A capitulates to her views and thus places himself and his assets under her jurisdiction, or B portrays himself to her as having capitulated to her views and thus places himself and his assets under her jurisdiction, or C removes himself from her jurisdiction and surrenders half of his assets to her voluntarily, or D removes himself from her jurisdiction and is forced to surrender half of his assets to her by the courts. Did you hear about the new divorced Barbie? She comes with half of Ken's stuff. Like, that last part, the joke about the divorced Barbie, that honestly just sounds like a dumb joke from the 90s. But at the same time, you know it's possible for a woman to make more money than her husband? It's also possible for a couple to sign a prenuptial agreement. And yet at the same time, this makes no goddamn sense. And yet it's so beautifully written. It is ridiculous to discuss equality between the genders as anything but a feminist hallucination until women agree to surrender their right to alimony. Of course, women will never surrender alimony because they are not, contrary to their very vocal protestations, equal to men. Let's just read that again. Of course, women will never surrender alimony because they are not, contrary to their very vocal protestations, equal to men. Well, okay. I mean, he said it. He said it. A percentage of the female population is capable of providing for themselves the basic necessities of life, but it is a small percentage indeed, when compared with the female population which relies on the largesse of boyfriends, husbands, ex-husbands, fathers, and or the government. That's, okay, like, that's a very bold claim. I get this whole thing is full of bold fucking claims, but like, come on, for being a creature of reason, of masculine truths, that's like, that should have some sort of mathematical statistic behind it, even if it's, like, abused as fuck. At least it's something, but no, it's just an assertion. He just asserts this shit is true. And he wonders why, like, does he wonder why his wife left him? Okay. These hidden, obfuscated transactions, the husband who finances the startup of the wife's boutique business, the fat alimony settlement which serves the same purpose, the father who co-signs his daughter's car loan or mortgage, who pays all or a part of the down payment, compels self-deluding women to believe that they are self-reliant feminists. The part where he's like the father who co-signs his daughter's car loan or mortgage, does this apply if a father co-signs his son's car loan or mortgage, or just if he co-signs his daughter's? Also, like, what's his opinion on lesbian couples? Like he mentions earlier, he doesn't have anything personally against gay marriage, but like, you know, you don't have to marry a man. And of that small percentage, a still smaller percentage of the female population is capable of generating surplus wealth, that is, creating employment, creating excess capital, which provides not only for themselves but for others. That still smaller percentage exists in numbers sufficient only to make possible banner headlines and full-color photo spreads of anecdotal success stories in Cosmo and People magazines, anecdotal success stories which are evasive of a central reality. That for every much celebrated, much heralded female success story in a given profession, discipline, art, or business, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of male success stories in that same profession, discipline, art, or business, which are unheralded and uncelebrated, which are merely the fiscal foundation of our society and the source of our society's, and most feminists' material wealth. So, like, for someone who gets mad at anecdotes, this dude can't provide any fucking numbers. I'm a math nerd. I'm kind of losing my patience here. Where are the numbers, Dave? Where are the fucking numbers? All right, like, you got a small percentage, a smaller percentage? Do you have even the vaguest, foggiest fucking idea of what these numbers are? These numbers. I can't even ask what do they mean, because they're just not fucking there. If this is false, then women are self-sustaining. If women are self-sustaining, then alimony is unnecessary and must be eliminated. Okay, yeah, honestly, I'm pretty sure that he's just really rotten about his divorce at this point. Like, his wife did help him with a lot of the setting up of the Cerebus comic, doing a lot of the background work, like helping with some of the drawings and dealing with like the printing and the shipping aspect. And honestly, like, I really have to wonder, is he just salty about his divorce? Like, I know Dave's alive still. Like, is his wife still alive? Like, if so, I really want to talk to her. Or Dave. Honestly, I'd probably get more useful information from his wife, but I would most certainly have a much more fun time talking to Dave. Like, I would probably just be laughing my fucking ass off talking to him, or actually, maybe just sending faxes back and forth. Okay. If this is true, then equality between genders is a hallucination, a cul-de-sac of delusional societal quote-unquote thinking. Women are the chauvinists, not men. Nicolas Chauvin was a devoted soldier and overzealous supporter of Napoleon Bonaparte in all things French. Chauvinism is defined as unreasoning, italics mine, attachment to one's race, group, etc. To celebrate, herald, and champion one woman publicly for doing what hundreds and thousands of men are doing in obscurity is chauvinism, unreasoning attachment to female achievement out of proportion to its contribution to society, just as Chauvin's devotion to Napoleon and all things French was drastically out of proportion to the limited importance of Napoleon, the limited importance of the French. I can't believe... I knew that line was coming, but every time I read it, I can't fucking control myself. It's beautiful. I love it. I am... Oh my fucking... Okay, let me just read it again. Okay, breathe in out. Okay. Unreasoning attachment to female achievement is out of proportion to its contribution to society, just as Chauvin's devotion to Napoleon and all things French was drastically out of proportion to the limited importance of Napoleon, the limited importance of the French. I mean, I guess he came from a British part of Canada. Probably didn't like the Quebecois or something. Oh god, the limited importance of the French. Like, what is this? 1620 England? Oh god. Okay. Now, that was the end of Tangent 1. Oh, it's ending. Oh my god, that ending. Like, he just spends the whole time ranting and raving about just this nonsensical outlook, this sheer bile towards this hideously romanticized female creature that exists only within his head. I can't even call it a woman, whatever it is he's imagining. It's just this feminine creature thingy. He doesn't even go into much about the masculine truths on the first tangent. Maybe he does it in a future tangent or something. Like, I will say, I've read these before. It was a while back. I mostly remember that I was just laughing like an idiot the whole time. And I'm like, holy fuck, I gotta share this shit with everybody because it's beautiful. But it's like, altogether, like 50-something pages. And I'm like, okay, nobody
in their right mind who's like not a total fucking nerd like me is just gonna read through 50 pages of this bullshit. So I'm like, I'll read it my fucking self. I gotta share this shit with everyone. Like, seriously, he legit just sounds like a prototype of these anti-SJW YouTubers, only with a much, much better grasp of the English language. Like, just despite the fact that he'll cut paragraphs in half to put his own asides into what are already called tangents. And yet, I love every fucking second of it. It's vile. It's sexist. It is fucked up beyond belief. And it's amazing.
Hello, this is Fiveum, saying thank you for listening, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed it. If you can, please like and share it around, and if you're feeling especially generous, please subscribe. I need at least 100 subscribers to change my YouTube channel's URL, and my default is long and ugly, and I really don't like it. It would be extremely helpful for me if you subscribed. But you don't have to. I'm not your boss. I'm just Fiveum. And right now, I'm signing off.